I'm 55 years old and I've only £100,000 in my pension. So have I left it too late? It's one of the most common retirement fears that most people have. You open your pension statement from your provider, get depressed by seeing the number, and then compare it to all the stories about pension millionaires, people retiring early, your colleagues who have got millions, and financial experts talking about £500,000 pensions as though they're completely normal. Now, it's easy to conclude that retirement is now impossible with just £100,000, but the answer depends on something that many retirement videos completely ignore. Do you own your own home or do you rent? That completely changes the outlook of your retirement. Today, we're going to build two retirement rescue plans. One is for Sarah, who owns a home, and one is for David, who rents. So both, let's do first of all, Sarah and David. Both are 55 years old. And they both have £100,000. Their retirement futures are going to look very different. So let's first of all look at Sarah, and then we're going to look at what David's options are, and then we're going to do some do's and don'ts. So Sarah is 55, she's got £100,000, and she owns her own home, completely mortgage free. Her first reaction is probably the same as everyone else's. £100,000 doesn't feel like enough. But before she does anything else, the first step is to check her state pension forecast. So let's draw an arrow, and she should check her state pension. A full state pension is currently worth around £12,000 per year. So let's put that on the board, 12,000. That income could form the foundation of the entire retirement plan, yet many people have no idea what they're actually entitled to receive. Sarah needs first to understand exactly how much state pension she's likely to get and whether there are any national insurance gaps that should be filled. The second step is to stop focusing on today's pension value, the £100,000, and instead focus on her retirement pension value. Let's assume that Sarah continues to contribute £500 per month and then plans to work until 67. That's another £72,000 of contributions over the next 12 years. So 72k over the next 12 years. And that's before we even consider investment growth. If investment returns are reasonable, her pension could potentially grow to maybe £200,000 or £250,000 more by that 67. So now the situation looks entirely different from the very frightening 100,000 figure she started with. The next step is to question whether her plan's retirement age is realistic. Now, many people choose retirement age emotionally rather than financially. So perhaps Sarah has already pictured in her head retiring at 60. But what happens if she works until 65 or maybe 67 instead? Every extra year she works means more pension contributions, more investment growth, fewer years drawing from the pension, and then less pressure on the overall pension plan. Working longer probably doesn't sound very exciting to me or anybody, but it is often the single most powerful lever available to us, especially if we have small portfolios. So one option is for her to work for longer. The fourth step is where Sarah has advantages that many people forget about. She owns her own home. That house isn't just somewhere to live, it's a complete retirement asset. If retirement becomes difficult, she could consider downsizing. She could even consider selling. She could move to a cheaper part of the UK. She could release equity later in life. She could even sell up and move overseas to somewhere cheaper. None of these choices need to happen immediately, but having these options provides some flexibility that many retirees simply don't have. Now imagine Sarah reaches retirement and then she discovers she needs an extra £5,000 per year to feel comfortable. Now, just downsizing from, say, a £350,000 house to a £250,000 property could potentially release £100,000 of capital. Suddenly that problem looks far more manageable. The fifth step is considering part-time work. Retirement doesn't have to mean stopping work completely. If Sarah earned just say £5,000 per year from consulting, maybe freelancing, tutoring or part-time work or anything like that, then she could dramatically reduce the pressure on her pension portfolio. Now, many people assume retirement is about all or nothing. In reality, a gradual transition often works much better financially. Notice what's happened here. Sarah started with a pension pot that looked worryingly small, £100,000. But once we include the state pension, future contributions, investment growth, housing wealth, and perhaps a little part-time income, then her retirement no longer looks impossible. It may not look luxurious, no, but it's certainly not hopeless. So let's now turn our attention to poor old David. So David is in a similar situation. He's 55 years old. He's got £100,000. Not a huge amount, but not insignificant. But unlike Sarah, he rents his home rather than actually own it. And he's currently paying £900 per month in rent. Now, David's challenge isn't really the pension, it's the rent. That's the killer. The first step is exactly the same. He needs to understand his state pension entitlement, and just like Sarah, a full state pension could become a major source of retirement income. The second step is also the same. He needs to project what his pension might look like at retirement rather than focusing solely on today's balance. If he continues contributing and remains invested, his pension may be substantially larger by the time he actually stops working. But from this point onwards, David's rescue plan starts to look different. The third step for David is likely to be increasing contributions as much as possible, because he doesn't have a housing equity acting as a backup plan. His retirement income will depend more heavily on pensions and savings. Even relatively modest increases in pension contributions can have a meaningful impact over 10 years or more. The fourth step is again looking at retirement age. For David, working a few extra years may have an even greater impact because it delays the point at which he needs to fund both living costs and rent from his retirement income. So let's say he works for longer. The fifth step is to examine future housing costs carefully. Many retirement plans underestimate how significant rent can become over a 20 or 30-year retirement. David needs to include realistic housing costs in every retirement projection that he creates. Ignoring them won't make them disappear. The sixth step is considering location. Does David need to remain where he currently lives? Could he move to a lower cost town? Could he relocate to a completely different region? Could he even retire overseas? These questions are often overlooked, but reducing living costs can be just as powerful as increasing investment returns. Let's imagine David could reduce his annual living costs by, say, £5,000 simply by relocating to a cheaper area. That's effectively the same as generating thousands of pounds of additional retirement income every single year. The next step is embracing some semi-retirement. So if Sarah benefits from part-time work, David may benefit even more. A few £1,000s of earned income each year can significantly reduce the pressure on the retirement savings. The goal isn't necessary to keep working forever. The goal is to create flexibility. So who is in a better position? Most people would probably choose Sarah, and that's understandable. A mortgage-free homeowner generally has more options than someone renting, and that's not really the lesson. The lesson is that both Sarah and David have options. Too many people see a £100,000 pension and immediately assume the outcome is fixed. They think retirement success or failure has already been decided and fate is taking its turn. But in reality, retirement planning is often about flexibility. Working longer, contributing more, spending less, earning part-time income, moving location, or adjusting expectations can collectively transform a retirement plan. Now, before we finish, let's talk about what not to do. If you're 55, and you're worried about your pension, don't stop contributing because you think it's pointless. The years immediately before retirement are often more important than people realize. Don't panic and move everything into cash. While managing risk is important, abandoning long-term growth entirely can create new problems. Don't chase miracle investments or those quick get rich quick schemes. promising extraordinary returns. People who feel behind financially are often the people most vulnerable to scams. Don't take pension money earlier than necessary because you're worried. Every single pound withdrawn today is a pound that can't continue growing in the future. And perhaps more importantly, don't compare yourself with people online who seem to have the perfect finances. There'll always be someone with a larger pension, a larger portfolio, or an early retirement date. The real question isn't whether £100,000 is enough. The real question is what you do next. Sarah and David started with exactly the same pension balance. Yet their retirement plans look completely different because their circumstances are different. One has housing wealth, one has housing costs. One may rely more on downsizing, the other may rely more on additional income and cost reduction. And that's why retirement isn't about a single number, it's about building a plan. So if you're 55 and you've got £100,000 in your pension, don't spend your time worrying about what you'd have done 20 years ago. Instead, focus on the practical decisions available to you today. Check your state pension, review your contributions, consider your retirement age, understand your housing situation, explore part-time work. I've run out of fingers. Think about whether a different location could improve your finances, because the number on your pension statement tells you where you are today. It doesn't tell you where you'll be in 10 years. And for many people, those 10 years will matter far more than they will today. Thanks for watching, hope it's been useful, and I shall see you soon on another retirement video.